So it was 4.5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, that we had a remarkable interview with a man called Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson is the father of Joe Wilson, who many of you now know as being a local teenager from Carfin who sadly died unexpectedly, but whose life has inspired many people since through his words and his story. And we're delighted to say that at this stage, after 5 years now of more in-depth discussion, focus and devotion to Joe in the diocese, that a book has been written about his life story, his biography, by the author Jane Burns. And Jane Burns is here with us. We're actually delighted to welcome Jane Burns here today, Veronica and Alan, Joe's parents, to effectively launch this book. So Jane, maybe just tell us briefly what inspired you and how did this process affect you?
Well, it inspired me a lot because when I was asked if I would like to write this book, I had just come through cancer treatment 6 months previously and I hadn't written anything for a while. And then out of the blue, this call came, would I like to write the biography of this young man, Joe Wilson, whom I had heard briefly about through my nephew, who was one of his fellow 6 years at Taylor High School. And I really felt that it was something I had to do. And the process began then. I agreed to do the book. And then it was lockdown, so it was quite a strange time to be asked to do the book, especially a biography, when it's required that you speak to lots of people, find out about Joe, find out about his life, his story, what people remembered about him, what stories they had to tell. So Zoom and WhatsApp and various other sort of technological aspects allowed me to do that over a longer period of time than probably it would have taken had we not had the lockdown experience.
Well, one of the things that's been amazing about the last 5 years, kind of looking at this story from afar, is the sense that people have really taken to Joe's life, and also, just to recap, people who are watching, of course, the reason I interviewed Alan 5 years ago was because I happened across Joe's words long before Sancta existed and always kept that book and felt, when I was reminded of it, when I saw it in the SCO, the Catholic Observer at the time, that it was worthy to, maybe because I was in a position to do so, to help that cause out. They were raising money for heart charity, I think, or something like that. So that video went very, very viral. And not only viral, it resonated with people, and people were saying, I've found this book before as well, and I've felt the exact same way. People were certain of his reputation for holiness. They were very clear that he lived a good life, and we had these wonderful words that he'd written. So I don't know if I could ask Veronica about that. The last 5 years has seen a greater focus on Joe's life. How has it been for you, being his mother and seeing people react to him in such a way?
It's been really amazing. It's quite wonderful that so many people are still interested in him, obviously mainly because of his faith and his wonderful personality. And it's just nice to think that he inspires people still and he's helping people. And it also feels quite natural because we know how great he was. He was terrific to have around, great sense of humour, deep connection with God, and he was just very interesting to be with. So it's great.
And Alan, what about yourself? Did you have obviously it was 5 years ago, we didn't really know what was being or going to happen after that interview and the things that subsequently happened, of course. I'm aware there's some official talk in the background from diocese levels and things about opening Joe's cause. I don't know if you have information about that. I know you're not directly involved, but what's happening there?
Yeah, like, you're spot on. I mean, we're not directly involved because it's, this just wouldn't be appropriate for us to be involved at all. But I guess if I can recap over since we spoke last, well, not since we spoke last, the last time we were in this situation interviewing. And at that point in time, all there was Joe's words. The booklet that we get quotes out from his diary. And it's just, what's happened since is just, it's extraordinary. Because it's gone from, here's Joe's words, and an awful lot of folk that knew Joe the person, and his words seemed to just bring that out, and it resonated with people. But that then developed to, there was, quite a few years ago, a kind of informal chat with the bishop, from someone we know well. And the bishop suggested, starting devotionals. And then the prayer that was on the back of Joe's words now, and there's nice wee prayer cards, that was written by Father Martin, that was constructed, and it's kind of, wow, this is amazing. So remember the first devotional and the first few devotionals, which was pre-COVID, and just to see the number of people, I mean, it was, I don't know, couple hundred people just coming out to these things. Mm-hmm. And it was the diversity of who was there. It wasn't just, folk of my age or just Joe's pals, but there was a whole breadth of people, folk that knew Joe well, folk that knew us, folk that I'd never seen before in my life. No idea. And just to see this happening was amazing. Now, these devotionals have carried on, and the Facebook page has been created, and the Joe Wilson Association. The Joe Wilson Association is a lay association that takes things forward, and that I think that's what you're alluding to. We're not part of that, but they obviously was informed of what's happening. Now that's progressed, carrying on with the devotionals, and seeing the Facebook page. I mean, Facebook page, when there's any post on there, the engagement is in the thousands. And just to think something as simple as somebody needs help, approaches the Facebook page, and there's all these prayers for them. I can't help thinking that's exactly what Joe would be he'd be one of the first to get in there. As Veronica says, and you'll read in the book as well, Joe really loved to get into prayer. If anything was happening, he just loved to pray there and then for it. And I'll not spoil it because you'll get it in the book. But there's a couple of wee bits in there that kind of show you that. And that's then developed further, with the increase in devotion. And it's extraordinary the amount of people that have kind of noticed Joe's, not just his spirituality, but also his ordinariness as a teenager. He did all the stuff that teenagers do. Went to the cinema and hung out with his pals, and they had a good laugh, and kicking the ball about, and doing all the stuff that they do. But deep in there with Joe was this absolute spirituality and absolute love of God. And Veronica touched on it as well. When you're living with him, it's just natural. It's just him. Yeah. It's not, you're not seeing somebody really pious and, oh my goodness, what's this person like? No, he was an absolute joy to be around. A real joy, a real pleasure to be around. And and there's lots of folk, just say exactly the same thing. So we then move on from the devotionals and the interest that created, and then lately, there was the book that Jane's put together, and that's got a load of great information, bits of biographical, lots of other bits and pieces, testimonies from lots of people that again bring out his character. It's a good read, I think.
A bit biased, maybe?
Maybe a touch. But there's also been an approach by the Lay Association, the Joe Wilson Association, to Bishop Toll to, perhaps look at, can something go further? And at the early stage, they're at the early stages now, but there's someone that's been recognised as the potential postulator who's putting together a petition just now, and in due course that will go to the bishop and the bishops of Scotland, and where it goes from there, that's in God's hands.
Excellent. And Jane, of course, one of the things that we saw from the reaction to Joe's words was people saying, these are incredible quotes. This boy must be incredible. Who is he? The question always came up, who is Joe Wilson? Tell me more about him. So I guess really that was the starter question for yourself writing this book.
Yeah, the more I talked to Alan and Veronica, and the more I learned about Joe's home life and his school life, and all the kind of memories of friends, and they both touched on the word that sums up Joe, and that's joy. In fact, one of the quotes in the book is of Joe at school, And it was an RE teacher who said, when Joe came into the room, he brought with him joy. And I think that sums up. And I, like you, I read the Joe's words. I picked it up in Carfin Grotto, read it in one sitting in the Glass Chapel, and thought it reminded me of St. Therese of Lisieux, which a number of people have said he went about his daily life, embraced every moment of his life with joy, with enthusiasm, and with faith. And all these things are bound together like a tapestry. And when I was getting down to the point of writing the book, I wanted, people knew about Joe's faith from Joe's words, but I wanted to bring out this other side of Joe that his parents had seen, that his friends had seen, that his teachers had seen, this joy, this enthusiasm, all the things he was interested in and did 100%, or as they say in the talent shows these days, 110%. Joe gave that to his daily life, but within that and bound into that was his faith. But he embraced his faith with joy as well. So all that joy came through, and I had the task of then trying to bring that out in the book to show the other side of Joe that people wouldn't have found in the words, but the people who knew him already knew, and it's trying to impart that to the other people who had become interested in Joe through his diary.
Well, I've read the book. I got a previous look at it before it was done just a few days ago, and I read it in one sitting. It was really well written. What struck me about it, Jane, was not just the fact that it's aimed at anybody. Anyone could read this book and be inspired by it, but the fact it's set in themes. So you look at it, I read it from cover to cover, but quite easily you could pick up at a coffee table and flick one of the pages open and read one of the chapters. This one I just flicked at just now is the Wisher General at the end of his life and the wider reaction to the community. And you can read it and it's very chunked down in nice wee bites with nice pictures and photographs and some of the quotes from Joe's words as well. But one of the things I'm going to ask Veronica about is one of the things that really interested me is you have spoken in the book about Joe's joy and how it affected people, and certainly from the feedback I've heard over the last 5 years, you've heard that testimony that Joe was a delight to be around. Veronica's more a witness to the kind of hidden Joe, in the sense the spiritual deepness that was really the engine behind how Joe lived his life. Yeah. And one of the things that struck me in this book for someone so young is this concept that he fasted, that he would close his door and pray. That's very deep for someone, 14, 15. Can you tell us more about that?
He really was very deep and very self-disciplined, actually, from quite a young age, I would say. He knew his own mind, and the more he became interested in his faith, he decided to do these things. And funnily enough, when he said to me one day, "I'm going to fast," I said, and he was going to school. I said, "Don't do it today because you might feel faint. Wait until you're at home." Came home that day later on, huge big smile on his face. "Mum, I did it. I didn't eat all day." So I couldn't give him an hour. I just said, "Well done."
What I like about the way Jane's written the book is there's emphasis and reminders that he did like his food. He enjoyed eating, had an appetite, so that makes it even more incredible. Yeah.
But he didn't think twice, and he done it again. He did it quite a lot over the next 2 weeks after that. He kept telling us, "I did it that day and I did it that day." And he really got joy out of that. He was offering it to God and for his own intentions, and that was it. He had his own private relationship with God, and you could see it. It was just fabulous for somebody so young.
One of the lines that moved me as well was he mentioned something about he prayed in private, and he said he felt the presence of Jesus and Mary. Yeah. What was that about?
Well, I just remember that specific time, one time when he came down and said that he was almost in tears, and he just said he couldn't believe the feeling that he got. He just felt he wasn't alone, that God and Mary and Jesus were with him. And I just felt so connected. He just felt sheer joy. Yeah. He even said to me, I can't even explain it. He couldn't find the words. And I just said, that's marvellous.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I'm not going to give away too much more of the book's content because you want to read it yourselves, but I've found it quite an amazing synopsis really of his life and great insights into someone, and it kind of shows the two sides, the spiritual and then the public side of the private spiritual and the public side of how he lived out his faith. What do you hope, Alan, that this book will achieve? And I don't use the word achieve loosely. Like what's your kind of... Jane's written the book and it's something that's going to be out widely read by people, we hope. What's your hopes for it?
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean, because it's quite a difficult thing to put into words. You know, what's the outcome? Where does this go? And I think it's probably, not from my perspective, but from the perspective of folk that have found an interest in Joe and his life and, you know, everything about him, it gives you a bit more insight into who he is and what he is. So Jane's done a marvellous job at just bringing out that essence of Joe. A very difficult feat to do, because, you know, it's like love. How do you actually define love? How do you actually say this is love and this is true love and this is the emotion that you feel and this is the comfort that you feel? How do you actually put that into words? Now try imagine doing that with, you know, just somebody that oozes this, you know, that just has such a care for everyone. And I've got to say, you know, there's a few iterations of the book, as you might think, but Jane's, you know, going from, you know, putting it in one way to putting it in the way it is now, and it just reads so well, and it brings all that out. So I think, you know, your question was, you know, what we're expecting from this. Bring love to the world through Joe, I guess. Maybe one of the other things, and this is probably one of the wee technical bits, that, you know, while the book will be on sale, all the proceeds are going to go to the Joe Wilson Association, because if, you know, there is a petition and if there is a cause, they'll need it. So it's just to make absolutely certain that everything that we can do to help the association is there, and it's a great way of doing it. You get to know a bit more about Joe, and you're helping the association. And, you know, even if it doesn't, even if there's no petition or anything else, the story of Joe and the impact it's having on people is good, and we'll still have copies of the book and, you know, Joe's words to print and candles, so, you know, it keeps that kind of thing going as well. So bringing some good to the world, I think, would be...
I think you're right. I think, looking back over, it's 5 years since we spoke, I said it at the time, and I think I'll reiterate it again. It's a very difficult place to be a Catholic today, a young Catholic, and we're seeing around us, even close to home now, we're seeing churches being demolished, we're seeing parishes being closed, we're seeing pews a bit emptier after COVID. We didn't expect to have that drop after COVID, but 1/3, I think, is the numbers quoted of people have left the church or don't practice their faith. So to see a book like this, talking about a young Catholic who, no longer here sadly on earth, but lived his life, lived his faith as strong as he did, as joyful as he did, and managed to live normally as he did, with an extraordinary way, it's a shot in the arm for everyone. Every single Catholic should read this in Scotland. You know, that's the point I try to make, is that we need a shot in the arm. And a shot in the arm is that people like Joe still exist, and Joe's example is one for the ages, in that we can live our faith joyfully, we can have hope, despite looking around and seeing people who are seeing their churches close, empty pews, that there's still joy in being a Catholic. I don't know, Jane, if that was the kind of audience you had in mind. You're obviously a bit older than me, no offence.
Well, I've also been a teacher too, so I've witnessed what it's like for young people in schools and the kind of peer pressure that's on them. And as I say, I didn't know Joe before, but I felt as though I knew Joe really well by the time I'd even gone through all the sort of notes I had. And he wasn't ashamed to pray, to tell people he'd prayed. He was quite happy with people not. Another thing that I hope comes out in the book is that his peer group respected that. There's a number of occasions where it's mentioned they just accepted that was Joe. And I think that came across mostly in that sad week when he was ill and he was in hospital. And they immediately, their first thought was to go to the grotto, to go and pray, because that's what Joe would have done for them. So he inspired people without them knowing they were being inspired. But I think the other thing that came out was that those people that he was around in his age group so respected that he had faith, never criticised him, never made fun of the fact that he had faith. They just accepted that this was Joe, and they loved that about Joe. So I hope that people can see that. People can see. And Joe wasn't afraid, as I think someone put it, to wear his faith on his sleeves, the same as it was. And I think of Pope Francis recently. Pope Francis has talked about, we need saints who wear sneakers, we need saints who go to the cinema, we need saints. And we'd already written the book, and the book was already been printed, and we thought to ourselves, that's Joe. Joe fits a lot of those categories. And that should also be an inspiration for anyone who's heard those words uttered recently by Pope Francis, that there they have a young man who epitomised what he is talking about now. And hopefully they will see that they can be like that too. And there's nothing wrong with it.
What's amazing about the whole Joe thing is how organic it really has been, in a sense that Alan alluded to the fact that people were turning up to his devotion who didn't know Joe, but had a resonance with him. What is the thing, if you can try and nail it down, what is a unique virtue or character that brings that resonance?
It's the fact that he is an ordinary teenager who went about his daily life as other teenagers do. He went to school, he studied hard, he loved being with his friends, he loved doing the simple, ordinary things, and he did it with faith, and people saw that, and people can see that. And even when they read his words, they can see that here is a young man who just embraced every moment. There's a section in it called Carpe Diem, Seize the Day, and it has the lovely hand clay print that he did with Veronica, with his mum. And I think that sums up Joe. And when you see somebody like that, and young people see somebody like that, they can think, I can do that. I can be like that. Here's a good guy. Here's a cool guy. I think Joe was cool. It was cool to be Catholic. When you talk about we need people like Joe, Joe was the epitome of how cool it was to be a Catholic.
Yeah, good words. No, it's good. I think one of the things that's interesting about Joe's story as well is I look at the Facebook page recently to see what was going on it, and I saw a lot of great feedback from people who have been helped by him as well, which is interesting. And that's one of the things which has been common throughout the kind of last few years, is that people are praying for Joe's intercession, inspired by his life, and they think they've been helped by him. What would you say, Alan, to, some people might have a kind of, people are sceptical these days about religion in general, but even more sceptical about the idea that someone so young and so ordinary, if you could call it that, has such a connection and such an inspiration to people, and they try and look for maybe, where does this come from? There must be a reason for it. Is it the parents? Is it someone else pushing it? What would your response be to that? If you think, is it something you're doing to help with grief? Is it something you're doing just to cope with life after Joe's death? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can totally understand folk thinking that way, because, if I was outside looking in, I'd probably be I can be quite a sceptical person. I'd probably go, okay, where's the catch here? What's going on? And how would I answer it? There's probably a few things come to mind, and what I've found is every step along the way since Joe died, every single step along the way has been something that's been put in place. Not us going looking, let's do this, let's do that, let's do the next thing. See, to be perfectly honest, as a parent, it's a very, very tough thing to do. But every single step, and I'm talking about from Joe died, in that very first moment where the school was having the memorial service 3 months after he died, and I just wanted to say thank you, and I asked Jerry McCorrick, who was the head teacher at the time, can I say something at the service? I said, yes, of course you can. And I was looking for inspiration. I'm recapping a wee bit of our interview of 5 years ago.
They might not have seen it, so it's fine.
So I went up into Joe's room, and there sitting at his desk were his school jotters, and I just started flicking through them, and I'm going, wait a minute, this isn't maths, this isn't English, this isn't geography. And the spare pages in the back of his jotters, he'd been writing his diary. The chance and coincidence of coming across that, we could have just looked at his jotters, put them away in the cupboard with everything else, but actually just sit down, and prompted because I was going to say something at this memorial service. And then I thought, right, I need to find a quote out here that's relevant. And there's a couple of things that came out, and I used them and by saying thank you at the memorial service. And I took the diaries with me and I held them up, found these and told everyone the story. The response was beyond what I thought was going to happen. And then that sparked into life Jerry McCormick. And he said, these are good, these diaries. And then we went to see who became a very, very good friend, Father Broderick. His spiritual advice to us has been second to none at the time when we needed it. And again, the coincidence of how I got to meet Father Broderick, I can't tell you exactly what it was because I'd been portraying a conference for confidence with someone, but it was in a situation that was very unusual for that person to say, go and see this person. So I went to Father Broderick and we got to meet him. Again, somebody that was just put in place. This wasn't us. And it was actually with Father Broderick helped me with my grief. And we were talking about Joe and whatnot, and he was saying, was it his words are important? Is that what he said?
Yeah.
So you're saying, okay, this is something. Then Jerry offered to transcribe it, and we were going, okay, that's good. At least then that's a permanent record and it's safe. And okay, so with the transcript of the diary, then it's, okay, what do we do with this? And it was like, we started reading through it and just picking out some quotes. Mm-hmm. And we gave them to Jerry McCormick, just in the thought, we'd literally just taken a Microsoft Word document and we'd just taken a bunch of words, typed up, said, there you are, and, maybe put something together for that. That might help you in the school and inspire folk or whatever. And then he got Robert Stewart, who was a technician at Taylor High, to take the words, and what he did, putting it together into the booklet that we now know as Joe's words. I mean, you looked at it and going, that was genuinely the first time I looked at all this and went, wow. It was almost as if it was the first time that I kind of saw it, not as Joe's dad or there's someone that knows Joe well, but someone that didn't know Joe well, and looking at this and I'm going, wow. And then I'm thinking, crikey, all this stuff was when he was 14, 15 and 16 years old. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, whoa. I can't even get to that level of spirituality at my age, and you're already there, son. That was one of the first kind of realisations. There's, maybe we're getting led into something here. And again, it's different things that get put in place. Other folk that we met, then, our interview, for example, or even that came about through, we were doing a second climb for Joe, but just there was only about half a dozen of us. It wasn't the big grandiose thing that we did before. And you picked up on that, and then that sparked another bit of interest. And then other folk appeared, and that sparked a wee bit, let's go and speak. Initially, an informal chat with the bishop, and then that sparked, you should do devotionals. So all the time, I feel as if somebody's taking us by the hand and leading us. And it's actually quite a surreal feeling. Yeah. Quite, because you feel as if sometimes you're not there, but you are there, totally. And again, as the devotionals happened and folk came forward to help with this, and then, we'd Andrew came forward and said, do you want music for the devotionals? And got his carried group, to come and do it. And then, you've got the next developments, and folk are actually saying, yeah, we need to go back and see the bishop. And, folk started getting testimonials and favours and different bits and pieces. And they thought, they need to put this together. And again, it's somebody else. It's somebody saying, we need to do this. Taking that then to the bishop. And then the bishop, saying, okay, here's the next steps. And actually recommending and finding here's someone who would be a good postulator. Again, totally led, and this person's been put in place as well. She's been studying, a PhD and whatnot, and she's local to the Motherwell Diocese. So you're going, start putting all those coincidences together, and that's the way it feels. It feels were being led. I mean, quite honestly, if I had my way, Joe would still be here. But I recognise not only are we being led, but as I say, it is actually quite a tough gig, but you're given the strength to do it.
On that point about strength, Veronica, you're evidently the quieter and more private of the couple. It was actually me. I asked you today to come on and speak because we spoke with Alan alone before, and obviously Jane's in the book and come in, but we hadn't really heard from you more publicly about it, and that's fine because everyone's entitled to their own levels of privacy. How do you maintain that sense of privacy and balance and peace? As Alan's detailed the progression of this, it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now there's a book out detailing facts about your life. You're part of this as well. Yeah. How do you cope with that?
I pray a lot. I'm okay with it. It's just been, I'm a very private person, but I'm just trying to see the bigger picture, and I don't want to get in the way of God's will if there is anything else going to happen, and you just have to come out your comfort zone and trust in God. And I know Joe would love this. He'd be very humble about it, but he would also be so proud, and he would say, why not me, and bring it on, and because it's all about God basically at the end of the day. It's to spread the word about God and to love him, and how the comfort and joy you can have having your faith and having God in your life like Joe had. So I just look at it that way.
Well, it's wonderful, and I think Jane has done a marvellous job in the book.
Yeah,
we're going to be telling you where it'll be for sale as we find out, but we're hoping it'll be in church stalls nearby, locally, and then on the link below there'll be a link where it'll be sold via the Joe's Faith page. You can buy it £7. It's a great read, really good. I'd recommend every Caritas student reads this. Joe was a Caritas student for a brief time, and also every high school student or anyone in general can read it and enjoy it and be inspired by it. It's uplifting, it's a great read, and it's one to definitely watch. So I'd thank you all for coming in. Thank you, Alan and Veronica, firstly, for coming in and being so upfront about this, because it's a challenging thing to talk about publicly as well. Of course, it's the scrutiny. And thank you, Jane, as well, for first of all the fantastic book you've written, but also the work you've put into it as well. So well done.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
That I meant to say? Joe was a fantastic listener. He listened to people so much that I just feel now, if he's interceding for people, he'll be loving this, because he loved to listen to people and he loved people. And for somebody so young, it was a good talent to have, to be able to listen. That's it.
That's a very nice way to end the interview from Veronica there, that if Joe loves to listen, then he'll listen to you as well. So be sure to, if you've got any things you want to pray about, any worries, concerns, then be sure to add those to the intercession of Joe. So thank you. God bless you. Thanks for watching this church chat here from Sancta Familia in Holy Family, Moss End.